Well, hello out there in the NASDAQ community. We're so thrilled that you could join us right here from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, New York City. I'm Rob Phillips with NASDAQ. So pleased and thrilled to welcome back to NASDAQ. Dan Rice is president of Thayer Leadership. Dan, you've been our partner for the annual NASDAQ Veterans Day event for 10 years.
10 years it's been, yeah.
And the last couple were, because of the pandemic, virtual, so it's great to be back in person and virtual. So Dan,
fantastic. Thanks for having us back.
Welcome back. You know, so I thought I'd start there for the audience. Can you just give us a quick refresher on the NASDAQ and the Thayer partnership, and then your mission at Thayer Leadership?
Sure. We've just really appreciated this partnership with NASDAQ. You're such an amazing organization. And so 10 years ago, we partnered to celebrate, to bring the best companies together that honor and support veterans, their families, and our troops. And we have done 10 now. This is our 10th events on Veterans Day, so really proud to do that. And really what we've tried to do is to not only honor and celebrate, but educate companies on what they can do to support veterans more. And so outside of the official bell ringing, which we'll do today, we also hold an all-day conference where we have companies come in and they learn from each other and from what we've done as to what we can do. We've published several articles on what companies can do. And there's such a broad base of things that companies do. And in my opinion, it's one of the reasons America is so special in that we support our veterans so that we support our troops. We have an all-volunteer force, and all of this helps in recruiting, retention, and making sure that troops that are going in know they'll be honored. Those that complete their service are going to continue to honor the other troops, and it's a cycle. For Thayer Leadership, what we do is we really found that in World War II, everybody coming back, you know, we're military folks going into business, so there were military principles being taught to businesses. As the number of people have declined over the years, there are fewer and fewer veterans in businesses to bring the values and the lessons to corporations. So we created Thayer Leadership 12 years ago to bring the world to West Point, to learn the West Point way of leadership and the Army way of leadership. And then we started bringing that overseas and elsewhere. So we do leader development programs all over the world now. We have about 60 staff members, and we have about 70 faculty members. And we go all over the world working with companies large and small.
No, actually, it makes me think of something else, because we talk about it's a bit of a cultural divide between a military way of thinking and a corporate one,
yes,
if you will. About how many veterans are there in the U.S. right now?
Exactly. There's about 21 million, I believe, right now, veterans, and that's declined from, at one point, I think it was around 70 million from the World War II, Korea, Vietnam eras, where very large groups, and it's declined, and it continues to decline every year.
So that's the disconnect. You know, it reminds me, in the years that we've worked together on our Veterans Day partnership, one of the observations we have, and that you and I have discussed, it's all the companies out there know how terrific veterans are as candidates who are transitioning from military to civilian or corporate world. We all want to find them, and it's how to connect with them. So just your thoughts on how we bridge the gap, and then I have a follow-up for that.
Sure, it is. There is a big gap, I think, between the military and the civilian world. The civ
like a mindset?
Yeah, we call it the civ-mil gap, and it's been very well documented. A lot of reasons for it.
So the acronyms are out there: civilian, military gap.
Exactly.
Civ-mil.
Exactly.
We love our acronyms.
I know.
At NASDAQ and in the military.
Yeah, and so the civ-mil gap has, we've moved our bases away from the cities because the cost of living in the cities are very expensive. So we've moved the bases further and further. So many people in America don't know somebody in the military, don't have any family members in the military, which is very different than the past. And that creates a gap where there's often confusion. You know, Hollywood is no friend of the military because their job isn't to promote the military. Their job is to put, you know, butts in seats in movies. And so often the military isn't portrayed the way it is in reality. And so there's this gap between stereotypes, in my opinion. And so what we've been able to do is bring companies together to learn from some of the top leaders in the military. And they are always very impressed and come away learning something. And that's the goal, is to bring together. And we learn things from them too, from the corporations. And so we try to pass on those lessons also as we learn, because the world's changing so quickly for all of us in terms of technology, speed of transformation, globalization, and those lessons can transfer from one industry to the other.
It makes me think, and that is my follow-up question too. I am constantly amazed at the caliber and level of education and credentials in the military.
Yes.
and the schools they've been to, but I have had conversations as of you about members of the military and the disconnect, if you will. In corporations, it's not the worst thing to promote yourself and point out your own skills and abilities. In the military, it's a little bit opposite, yes?
It's exactly opposite. And it's such a different cultural change. It's really hard to teach that because people grow up in the military not promoting themselves.
Exactly.
They always promote their team. When the team does something well, the leader usually says, we succeeded. When the team does something or fails, the leader says, I failed. It's the opposite in the civilian world. And so, like when I wrote a book called West Point Leadership Profiles of Courage, I interviewed about 100 different West Point graduates. And at first I asked, I'd ask a CEO, would you like to be in the book because you're the CEO of Johnson & Johnson?
And a West Point graduate.
And a West Point graduate, Alex Gorski. And Alex would say, no, I don't deserve to be in your book. Would you interview my classmate who's a 4-star general? And I would interview the classmate who's a 4-star general. And they would say, I don't deserve to be in your book. Why don't you just focus on the Medal of Honor recipients? They're our greatest heroes. And I would go to the Medal of Honor recipients and they would say, I don't deserve to be in your book. Only honor the dead. And so at that point, I would have run out of people to interview because I can't interview the dead. Mm-hmm. So, but that was the kind of the process that was a learning process for me, that nobody wants to promote themselves, even at those levels. And so it's a cultural issue. And one of the things we do within corporations is try to teach people to be forthright when they fail, when their team fails, because you can only improve the organization if you're honest with yourselves.
Right.
And so to teach what we call after action reviews, where people will sit down and say, what happened today in this mission and our objective? What did we do well? What did we do poorly? And usually having the leader start off saying something that they did wrong themselves, like, I could have set the expectations better for this. And to teach that so that companies can be honest with themselves and not just have a bunch of self-promoters that are all independent and not acting like a team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's switch this a little bit to the audience who may be watching that, and I'll do 2 different groups. So let's say some of our audience are entrepreneurs or business people, and they're looking to attract talent. And we have an interest in connecting with the veteran community who don't promote themselves.
Yes.
How would you, what would your advice be at how to identify those who aren't self-promoting?
Within the veterans community, there are several organizations that have done a great job in recruiting from the military and then finding a pipeline into corporate America. So Orion, Cameron Brooks, there's a number of organizations that are great to help source and find. So if you're looking for somebody that's going to be an engineer for Amazon, or somebody that's going to be a supply chain person for your medical device company, you can go specifically source skills and talents from a group that has incredible experience. And so that's one way. The other is if people are near bases, to really network in to support the base, both from a philanthropic standpoint to help the base and soldiers and the families, but also to build relationships where people then want to come work with your company.
Community.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll flip the script. Same question now. If anybody out there is in the military contemplating a transition, or recently separated from the military and transitioning, your advice to those candidates about how they shine a light on themselves, if you will.
I think the veterans unemployment has gone down dramatically over the last 10 years, and I think it's due to a number of groups, Chamber of Commerce and a number of groups, what NASDAQ has done to promote veterans. And I do think that there's a more welcome corporate America to hiring veterans, and so that if anybody is looking for a job within a certain company, you can usually find the veterans representative and go source that person through like a LinkedIn. That usually has a way of getting into somebody that can speak your language, translate your lessons, help you into the company, and then bring you in with the network of veterans, because one of the biggest challenges veterans usually cite is they don't feel the camaraderie within the new organization. But when you join a group that has a veterans group, you automatically feel like you're part of a team again. And so it helps the transition.
Oh, look, we've had conversations with 3-star generals who said the transition was difficult. So you can imagine how difficult it's going to be for any of the younger viewers.
Yeah, exactly. The longer you're in, the more difficult
the transition. Cuts in business, too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I always enjoy as one of the NASDAQ veterans advocates is when you make the line managers understand the creativity in the thinking and how it does actually connect to military experience.
Yeah.
It's always a great conversation. Before we sat down, you were talking about the communication gap between different interested parties, and boy, doesn't that have some parallels with corporate work.
Absolutely.
Your role in helping enhance or facilitate communication, and then your thoughts, Dan, about what international corporations can do to facilitate collaboration, cooperation, communication.
Yeah, I think the parallels between the communications in the war and the communications within corporations right now are just so kind of a light dawned on me, and I realize, when you're in person with somebody, there's so much more value you get out of it that you can bond much more closely with the person. You can understand what's going through their head. You can understand what their family issues are, what's important to them. Hard to get that through Zoom. And so what I've found is that most companies, when they get together in person, it's been so long since they got together, they have a laundry list of things they want to accomplish. Let's go over the numbers, the budget, go over this. So they get together for 3 or 4 days and they've got this laundry list. I think we should flip it on the head. I think we can do a lot of that stuff on Zoom before the meeting, a lot of competency issues, communication. The big thing in person is to get the most value out of it, to keep your culture together the way it was prior,
right,
and then to take it to a different level. Same within the military. I think the real thing is to get together and bond and build trust and know each other personally. But I think we're seeing a tendency where people do certain things on Zoom and certain things in person, and they try to jam too much together in person. So.
Especially when the stakes are high.
Exactly.
As they are.
As they always are in corporation or in the military, the stakes are high and you're putting so much emphasis into that get together for 3 days that you want to, and everybody wants to have their list of things on the agenda, so the agendas get bigger. But really, I think if you take a step back and say, the real purpose for this is to build our culture so that we all feel part of this team and we all trust each other. And I think that if people keep that as a focus, there's a much better chance of having a good outcome.
So Dan, it has been great to see you in person.
Thank you, Rob.
Again.
You too.
Great to be back.
And
looking forward to a terrific event and, of course, our continued partnership.
And the whole Thayer team is really appreciative of this partnership, and many of them are here today, and they're just really grateful and thankful for all you do for veterans, not just on Veterans Day.